Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
We are back with the legend Kevin Wheeler. I am thrilled to have him and welcome him here. I had the opportunity, the honor to sit and watch your keynote this morning. So we have some fantastic questions. But for folks out there who may not know you, please tell us who you are and what you do best.
Okay, I'm a former recruiter, but right now I run a group called the Future Talent Institute. And we do research into future trends in work, employment, learning and development, the talent space in general. I really spend most of my time doing research, writing. I do a weekly column, written a couple of books, and I just try to educate and inform the recruiting community about what's happening out there in the world.
So as someone who's been in this industry for a long time, you've seen the technology trends really from paper to digital, to automation, to artificial intelligence. Is there one theme that still reigns true as we go through these cycles of technology, whether it be adaptation, resistance, reliance, over-reliance?
I think the nail on the head.
I didn't mean to answer that one, but
resistance is a big chunk of it.
I left that one out on purpose, folks.
Recruiters are very, I'd say, risk adverse, partly because of their work under HR, and the HR department is usually, there's a lawyer somewhere lurking around. Mm-hmm. So there's a tremendous amount of concern over legal issues and ethics and so forth, which is good to a degree, but it also inhibits experimentation and adoption of new technology. So they're very slow. It's really a monkey see, monkey do the business. So when the big guys start doing it, then the little guys think it's okay to do it, and then it becomes normal. If you look at ATS adoption, there are still companies today that don't have an ATS.
They're just manually
receiving spreadsheets or whatever, right? That's crazy. There's probably companies today that don't really have a career site. And these are just hard to believe, given the fact that these things have been around for 30 years. But that's the nature of the business.
Resistance. You mentioned something interesting. TA falling underneath HR. I think certainly still some companies have that from a hierarchy, organizational standpoint, but the ones that separate HR from TA and the ones that I've seen successful are the ones that put TA under marketing. Or they put it under operations, not under finance. Don't ever put it under finance. That's a big no. But moving it out from that HR bucket, what are some of these successes that you've seen when companies start to move away from that? TA is not a cost center, but it's actually a profit center because it's your people.
Yeah. It's a mind shift. And when you really look at recruiting and you say, what is the essence of recruiting? The essence of recruiting is marketing and selling opportunity. And if you aren't good at doing that, if you're just a paper pusher, it's going to be a struggle, right? And historically, back in the industrial era, you could be a paper pusher. That's what it was. It was personnel, admin, whatever. It was pretty easy and straightforward to just say, here's some openings, and people come and knock on your door, and you screen them in or out.
Round peg, round hole.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
And that may be still true for certain industries, but generally that's no longer true. And you have to differentiate yourself from the pack. You have to somehow make people aware that you exist and what kind of people you hire. And that requires some sort of marketing effort or whatever. I think any recruiting function that isn't focused heavily on marketing is already losing traction. And whenever I work with firms as a consultant, my first thing is to look at what's your career site like? What are you doing for your marketing position, right? And in most cases, it's pretty bad.
Especially when it comes to employer branding or candidate experience out there. And so many companies, it's an afterthought, but the ones that realize that if you put your money where your mouth is, you invest into the experience, you invest into the process, but you also invest into what that brand is. How do you work with brands? I talked about this before, the guest today. I don't want to hear anymore that we love working here because we're a family. Yeah. Families aren't going to fire you. You're stuck with your family, right? Companies are not your families. So how do you bring out in your consulting practice what that unique value prop of a company is, why folks want to work there?
The first thing is I don't care about the value props of the company. That's almost immaterial. What I'm really focused on is the value prop for the job and the hiring manager, right? What are you going to be doing that's exciting and interesting, and who are you going to be doing it with? To me, the branding has to be much more low level, much more focused on what are you actually going to be doing in this company. We're going to build the next bomb that changes the world. I don't care if I'm working for the US government, Oppenheimer, or whoever it is. I'm excited to be doing what I'm doing, right? So that's the crux to it, and that's what they don't get. But saying, this is the greatest company in the world, who gives a damn? It could be the greatest company and the worst boss.
Right. And if we're going to update that one, it's going to be, I want to work for SpaceX because I saw them landing that rocket ship vertical like that. Right. And that technology is absolutely fascinating. It may not be as like, it's the innovation and what draws them there. So speaking about innovation, I loved your keynote this morning talking about AI, specifically when it comes to recruiters. And we're going to share the slide. I took a picture of it when we have it. The slide's going to go right here. And it's Kevin's slide with the 8 stages what recruiters could evolve to. If you could just summarize that for folks who were not with us during that presentation,
sure.
Which is almost everyone tuning in right now.
I've done a lot of thinking about what's the role of a recruiter as AI begins to replace their traditional functions.
It's happening.
And it's going to happen. And there's no doubt there'll be fewer recruiters than we have today. But they're going to be a much higher level, different kind of person in the recruiting role. So I outlined different steps or stages that recruiters can go through to get to that stage.
So we start with, and just for everyone playing at home, we have this recruiter driven. Then we have the haphazard, where recruiters are still critical to the process because the technology is here, but keep me straight here, Kevin, the company may not have adopted, implemented, or even started.
Exactly.
The next phase after that, recruiters are advisors and orchestrators. What does that mean? Let's stay within what's happening in the next, we'll call it 2 to 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, I think that's all that chart is good for, is 2 to 5, 6 years.
Well, we're going to have to refresh it pretty soon.
Yeah, it will have to get refreshed soon. But that step as an advisor, right now, I think that hiring managers, in my experience, many of them are asking for advice about who should I be hiring? Should I be looking for this kind of a role? Or on the other hand, the recruiter should be saying to the hiring manager, maybe you should be looking for something different. Maybe this is a project job, or maybe this is not a full-time permanent kind of position, right? But we need to have recruiters that can begin to have those conversations, build those kind of relationships with hiring managers. And let's face it, in most companies, the relationship a recruiter has with a hiring manager is virtually none.
It's order takers.
It's just order takers. They don't even know each other. So my biggest complaint that I get when I do consulting from hiring managers is I have no idea who my recruiter is.
That's a lack of communication within the organization. And I think it's a lack of prioritization by the C-suite coming down.
It's a lot of things. It's habit, tradition. It's HR does it.
Years.
I'm a hiring manager. Everywhere I've worked, it's been X like this, right? Or whatever. So they don't know any other model. Nobody's ever told them there could be a different approach, right? So it's like we do so many things in life just out of habit. Your hiring manager, you worked for this company, they did it this way, you'd expect it's going to be done the same way in this company, right? So it takes a recruiter who's got the time and the ability to communicate well, build that relationship, which is what headhunters do. It's what you probably do in your business, where it's all about building relationships, building trust, where people listen to your advice because they trust you and they've had a history with you, right? So if you don't have that relationship as a recruiter, you're already lost half the battle.
So is it safe to say, based on your prediction, we have the crystal ball in front of us right now, insert crystal ball right here, that there's always going to be a need for a good human recruiter at some point in the process, no matter how good the tech gets?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that to some of my points I made today, the 80% of all the jobs out there can be filled completely, I think, effortlessly with technology. Right?
It's just a fact.
That's the 80-20 rule that applies to everything in life, pretty much, right? 20% of them are going to need human touch. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be found by the internet because they don't have a presence.
Or passive candidates.
In that case, you're going to need the ability of people with the ability to do that sales job, to do what recruiters used to do when I first started in my career, which is talk to people, take them out for lunch.
Relationships.
Pardon me?
It's relationships.
Yeah, it's all about relationships.
But what about also, let's talk about the ability to have conversations if folks are neurodiverse or they have a disability.
Yes.
Because the machines, that's where the bias is going to come in.
Mm-hmm, it will. And that's where we have to do a couple of things. We have to sophisticate the AI, and it will get there. Like I've always said, I think AI can always be tailored, and the algorithms can be written for any purpose. Human beings are very hard to reprogram. So if you're a recruiter and you don't like certain kinds of people, you will probably never be very likely to hire those kinds of people. Okay,
I
so
like that.
you can fix AI. You can't fix people. All right.
You could tweak people. I think you said you could tweak the algorithm, but you can't tweak the people.
Exactly.
You can't. What scares you with this? It's so fast. We're at the point now of technology evolving at such a rapid rate. What keeps you up at night when it comes to the AI and the talent process?
I think what keeps me up at night is more how people and recruiters react to it than to the AI itself. I have a lot of faith in the AI's ability to evolve, develop, mature, become far more sophisticated than it is today very quickly. I don't think recruiters or even many of us are able to keep up with that evolution. So what frightens me, it doesn't really frighten me, but what concerns me is the fact that recruiters are falling further and further behind and not able to keep up with the pace of the change that's coming. And that means at some point there's going to be this big earthquake, this big disruption, right? Where recruiters just aren't able to do anything really much, and AI can do a lot of it, and that's going to really be the dividing line. So if I'm a COO of a company or running a company, and I see solutions happening through the AI, and I'm saying these people, I can't even get them on the phone, you're not going to hire many more recruiters, right?
No.
So I'm more concerned about the profession than I am about AI.
I completely agree with you. So my advice, Kevin, to recruiters out there, and let's just talk, for example, about an internal recruiter, where sometimes your hands might be tied. You need to be upskilling on your own. You need to be listening to ERE online. You need to be reading. You need to be in the trenches. You need to be the one in your organization who is a champion for the technology, who is immersing yourself on it, and who's bringing those solutions to the company to make yourself more valuable. How can I be more valuable than just a recruiter within an organization? And external recruiters out there, listen, I think there's always going to be a place for highly niche, specific tech roles, certain manufacturing. There's certain needs in executive search as well there too. But that whole 80% in the middle, they're not going to need us anymore.
Not going to need it.
But at the end of the day, there will be a few. It's the evolution. I love how you frame that. It's the evolution of the role. And it's either you're going to evolve or you're going to go the way of the dinosaur. Yeah. And what I want to give you kudos to is staying ahead of the curve, being a champion to someone who's been in this industry for a long time, and really just telling it how it is. Because what's the point in sugarcoating anything?
Yeah, this is the reality. And it's hard to be a realist sometimes, right? People always like to be sugar-coated and to always say it's always going to be rosy. And I think the life of a recruiter can be quite rewarding, but they're going to have to get a new set of skills to make that happen.
So you have your finger on the pulse. You're at almost every conference globally. What are some of these things you're hearing and seeing around the world in the industry that are exciting you?
I think some of the innovations in recruiting, like Scotty AI, which I briefly mentioned today, which is from the Netherlands. It's a completely automated recruiting tool that does everything from finding you to offering you the job.
Soup to nuts.
Soup to nuts. And it's adaptable. It was just in Australia, and within 2 minutes, it was calling people mate and using the Australian greeting of good day.
So it picked up the cultural nuances.
And the language with no training.
Next level here. But it still takes a human to control it, but only a couple of humans versus a mass scale of a recruiting practice.
Yeah. Somebody had to write the original algorithms,
but
then it starts to learn on its own. This is where people don't quite get the potentially scary side of AI. In that at some point, it doesn't need us anymore. It's
then we get into
learning
Terminator mode.
It's learning by itself. Even you talk to Sam Altman at OpenAI, and he'll tell you that we don't even know what the hell's going on. We have no idea. We have no idea how it's doing what it's doing because it's figuring out on its own. We can get into huge discussions around what's consciousness,
ethical
and
AI, of course,
and what's all this stuff. But the bottom line is, really sophisticated AI models are learning on their own.
So, how do we monitor and control bias with the AI?
You monitor the outcome, and then you go back and you modify the outcome, or you tell it, look, this isn't acceptable anymore. You can't do this anymore, and it will change. I can tell you that. The chances are you won't really change. You'll try for a week, and then it'll go back to the old way again. The AI will change.
Let's kick it back old school here for a moment here. What do you miss most about being a in the trenches recruiter? What do you miss about
the schmoozing?
That's why we do these podcasts and have the conversation.
Yeah. That's what you miss. I love
schmoozing.
Going out, meeting people, having lunch, talking about, learning about their family, their life, and helping them decide if this opportunity is the right one for them.
A great recruiter all great recruiters have one trait in common, and we are inquisitive.
Yes.
We want to know things. We want to know who you are. We want to know in a specific job how you figured it out. And that is one question when I ask almost, I'd say probably out of my 500 episodes, probably about 150 to 200 C-level executives. When they interview, they want to know, how did you figure it out and what was your contribution to that project?
Exactly.
They want to know your mindset here. So what's next for you?
I'm pretty far up in age. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing as long as I can do it. Just keep learning and exploring and communicating.
Is there a full-on retirement in the horizon, or you're just working until the end?
I just work till, hopefully I'll drop dead at one of these conferences.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not. That is not what we want here. Not on my watch. Not on my Apple Watch. That is not happening out here.
All right, in the car park. I'm parking lot.
Right? leave us with some words of wisdom here. I'm going to go to a classic podcast question here. Kevin, what is the greatest piece of advice that you've ever received that you take action on every single day?
Really making me think here. I guess it's don't be afraid of your own direction or forward, the way you think you should go forward, okay? Just do it. Don't be afraid and hold back. Be brave.
Be brave. Be brave. Kevin, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast. We have a legend. I also want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Juicebox AI, for bringing us here. Thank you to the fine folks over at ERE. Michael, Glenn, and the team, thank you so much for welcoming us here. Where could folks find you? Where could they connect? Where could they learn more?
Okay. And
get his books. We're going to link those up.
Yes, we can. You can subscribe to my newsletter, which is FOT News.
We will link up. We'll have all his links out there.
Places I can't.
We will have his LinkedIn profile.
And you can also reach me by email at kwheeler@futureoftalent.org.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
It was great. Yeah, it was fun.
This episode of the podcast, live from ERE 2024 in Anaheim, is brought to you by Juicebox.ai. Recruiting just got smarter with Juicebox, the company behind People GPT. With AI sourcing powered by generative AI, you simply tell People GPT who you are looking for in a natural language. Need a senior data scientist with healthcare experience? Done. Looking for a creative marketing manager based out of Austin? Easy. People GPT instantly creates a search and evaluates profiles, saving you hours of time and effort. Already trusted by over 500 companies and agencies, from boutique recruiting firms to Fortune 500 TA teams, People GPT is revolutionizing the way to find talent. Ready to level up your sourcing game? Use code POZ20, that's POZ20, for an exclusive 20% discount. Juicebox, where hiring meets the future. Start sourcing smarter today. Visit juicebox.ai. Thanks.
Welcome back. I am joined by David Crawford. He's the Vice President of Talent Acquisition across all the New York Presbyterian hotel. Geez, not a hotel. It is a hospital, but the word is hospitality, right? And
that is correct.
And how important is hospitality in the medical world?
Look at it this way. We're actually at a conference today, which is across the street from Disney, right? Disneyland. A hospital is not Disney. No one plans to go. No one wants to go to a hospital. They go there because they have to, because they have a medical situation where they need expertise. They want someone to take care of them. If they're going into that type of situation, they want the hospitality treatment to know that they're well taken care of. It's a good environment. People feel safe. In a way, it's very similar.
Hospitality is not black and white. Hospitality is, you hit the nail on the head. It's how you make somebody feel.
Yeah.
And that goes through the process too. Talk to us, first of all, in your remit, how many employees, how many hires per year, and just talk to us just to level set and calibrate the range of type of roles within this organization that you and the team are recruiting for.
Sure.
It's got to be massive, I'm assuming.
Well, across our 11 hospitals, and then we have medical groups, and New York Presbyterian is all within New York. And it's not as if we're in upstate New York. It's basically within the New York City vicinity. Yeah. And then also outside in Cortlandt Manor, which is close to Peekskill. Anyway, we have about 45,000 employees. And this year we should fill about 10,000 jobs. And it's all types of jobs. It's clinical, it's non-clinical. About a third of our recruiting is for nursing, But in running a hospital, and you have buildings and they run 24/7.
Facilities, operations,
You got
finance.
it exactly. Yes.
And what's your background? Were you in talent in this industry, or how'd you get into this specific niche?
I actually went, when I graduated from college, I went to work on Wall Street. So that's what I did. I worked at one of the top tier financial services firms for 23 years in operations. And then I went into finance, and then I moved over into HR, first talent development, and then into recruitment. Left there to go to one of the largest investment management companies in the world. Was there for a couple of years. Then I went over to MasterCard for 5 years. And then I got a call about New York Presbyterian. It actually was by the search firm that represented me over at BlackRock. Like, why are you calling me a money center guy? And typically in healthcare, they haven't been as proactive within HR. They said, you've worked at great organizations. Recruiting is not working well here. Let's see what you can do.
So they saw the value in how those companies that you worked at were run.
Yeah.
And they said, listen, they hired you for a reason. You must have these skill sets over there. So when you came in to New York Presbyterian, what was that first big thing that you needed to change with it? What was one of those big problems from a process standpoint? What wasn't working?
The thing is that the position was vacant for about 6 months, and they were constantly putting out fires. And what I saw was probably the first month and a half, I met with 100 people, and I'm not exaggerating, to say, what do I need to know? What's not working for you? What are you looking for? That was both within the team, the adjacent areas within HR, and then the areas that we were supporting.
So full listening tours.
It was. And it came down to, we need to change the structure of what we're doing. We need to look at our technologies. We need to look at our process. But most importantly, it's what's the problem we're looking to solve as far as bringing people to this organization? What do we need to do differently?
So it was a bit of everything.
Yeah, it was.
Attraction, retention, strategy, process.
And you can't fix everything overnight. So you need a roadmap. And you need to tell people, this is what we're going to do today, and this is what we're going to do over the next year or so.
So what was the first place you started?
Talking to the team and restructuring, and to have people to understand what we needed to do. I wanted their input as well, and to let them know that we're going to be on a journey. And it was basically that. But to let them know that there's a path here and there's a vision.
So from a leadership perspective, I think it's an important leadership lesson. When you come in new to an organization, you're not going to just come in and kick the garbage can over and say, I'm here. How do you earn trust and consensus?
Within the team or within leadership?
Let's start with your immediate team of direct reports.
First of all, that was going to be a problem. I didn't want it to be with the direct reports. I met with every single individual within talent acquisition, which they were a little surprised that I did that. But one question that I had for them was, if you were in my job, what's the first thing that you would do?
It's a great question to ask.
Part of it too was acknowledging what's their pressure point, what did they see was important, and also it's about being inclusive. The people who are on the ground doing the job sometimes have the best ideas.
Of course.
And it worked.
How did you make them feel safe that this wasn't like a hot seat? How did you disarm them? How did you humanize? How did you come in and frame it up and say, listen, I'm here to help. We're a team. How do you do that?
Yes. Whether it's good or bad or whatever, I've never been the type of boss or have that manager where people are afraid when I walk down the halls. It just doesn't happen. I seem to be very approachable. So with that, they could see with my demeanor, how I asked the questions, how I set everything up, that people felt comfortable, and it wasn't an interrogation in order to have that conversation.
And change takes time.
Yeah.
There's certain things you can implement and you can mediate. Let's talk about technology for a moment there. I assume with a lot of these large organizations that it's process paralysis and things need to get approved up the ladder, and then you're talking technology changes. What was one of those immediate or very quick tech pieces that you needed to change in the tech stack?
With one of them, it was using a different applicant tracking system. The reason why I'm saying that is we're working towards eventually moving to a different HR system. And that particular HR system had an ATS module in addition to the other ones that we eventually picked up as well. I was concerned about the integration between having one system that's connected and another one that was not. The other piece is the team helped to build that applicant tracking system, how it was configured, which meant they were too vested into it. And they felt that they were working with the vendor as far as making the customizations. And I'm like, that's not your job. What we want to do is to push that off to the side. That was one thing that actually took place.
How do you manage it? This is very interesting too, because you mentioned before, there's clinical, there's nursing, there's so many. How do you manage different recruiters where there's different skill sets and there's also different sourcing, right? I assume there's hourly employees.
Sure.
There's all the way from different levels within an organization.
Yeah.
How do you manage such a diverse workforce from a skill set of recruiters?
Well,
but also keep them together.
Some of our campuses are union, so we have to deal with the collective bargaining agreements. It's more than one union. There are different contracts. There are others that are non-union positions. And as you mentioned, there's the variety. But everything that we're doing within the healthcare system has to do with the patient. So what I have to make sure our recruiters understand is that we have very important roles as far as filling the role either internally with someone who's already an employee of NYP or finding someone from the outside, these individuals who work together on a team to address someone's life. When I worked on Wall Street, I saw it as, especially with some of the companies, everything's life and death, right? Everything's so
this
important.
is really life and death.
Literally, it is. So that's why it really comes down to what's truly important.
So bedside manner transcends all roles within the medical profession, including recruiters. So what makes a good recruiter? What are those skill sets and characteristics?
It's actually no different from what I learned on Wall Street, which was you have to understand the work. You have to understand the market. You have to understand the job. So what's made the recruiters especially efficient is you're not going to, especially these days, you're not going to understand your job by doing it through Zoom.
No.
You have to show up in the hospital because the things that you will learn, the things that people will say, won't be done over a virtual type of situation. Wow. So I've never been a supporter of having recruiters work solely remotely. That's just not me.
That's an interesting one. And I agree with you to an extent, obviously it's a very broad statement depending on industry and what you're working on. But for something like this, you really hit the nail on the head where the recruiter is an essential part of the business practice and is not just an afterthought or an admin function. And the companies that recognize that, because the people are the lifeblood of your organization, they know the importance of being there. And especially in the medical profession, if you're recruiting nurses, like what's their day-to-day like? Not all hospitals are the same. What's the vibe like? What's management teams like? It's absolutely incredible. You talk a little bit about job descriptions. How do we take what's on paper and translate that to conversations and to hiring the right candidate?
There are two pieces of paper I do not like. One's a job description, the other one's a resume. We're supposed to match the two. The reason why, and there's usually things that are dusted off, they're just put out there, how do you get this thing out? And realistically, if you go on Indeed, if you go on LinkedIn for jobs, they all read the same. The conversation that a recruiter has to have with a manager is, I say, I've read the job description. What are the three things I really need to know?
That's it.
That's it. And then once you know those three things, that helps you to construct the search as far as the profile, how the hiring manager is going to decide what the priorities are. And also what's really important is how the hiring manager is going to use his or her time.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this, how you interview. We're going to get into some real good stuff over here for a moment. I assume by the time at your level, when you have to interview somebody.
I do.
They already have the skill sets on paper and the experience. So when they get to you, you're evaluating character, values. They are going to be a value add to the organization. How do you assess that?
I actually, and this is even when I worked outside of healthcare, if I'm the recruiter, I meet with the candidate first, not later in the process. And I've hired for all different types of jobs with the head of compliance or legal or head of finance or a chief medical officer, you name it. I've never done any of those jobs. What candidates are looking for is, do you understand the strategy of the organization, the mission, and the corporate culture? And what I'm looking for is, do you understand what we stand for and the type of person that we're looking for to perform this role? Because it comes down to the culture is what it is. Either people gravitate towards it or away from it. And it's fine if this is not your cup of tea. But with that, I just want to make sure. And with that, when I'm having the conversation, it's how can I help you? I do realize there are two decisions to be made. One is going to be, do we want to hire you? The second, do you want to join us? I've been doing this a long time. I have no time for not being totally transparent. And I respect that people have decisions to make.
David, what's keeping you up at night as a business leader?
Nothing's keeping me up. I work really hard. I sleep really well. No, but seriously, I think it comes down to the market changes. We were incredibly busy during COVID.
Yeah,
we were exhausted. And in New York, especially, since you're a New Yorker, we got it first in the United States, basically, when we were seeing 100 patients coming in a day. And with that, we didn't have enough workers. We had to get more temporary help coming in. Our own people were getting sick. And as you knew, the rules were changing. Do you wash your groceries when you bring them in or not? We didn't have a vaccine at the time.
Crazy to think about that, by the way.
It was very stressful. So we've obviously advanced a bit beyond that. But what it comes down to now is, how do we not only find people externally, how do we upskill, reskill, move our people into jobs and provide the information so they know how to do it, either through additional education so they can get a license or a certificate or some type of registration.
So many companies need to look inside first before they hire. How do you take your current employees who are hand raisers or have shown an interest? They already enjoy working there. How do you keep them there? Retention, and it costs so much more money to hire somebody from the outside versus the inside. Let's leave us with this. How do you keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening outside of this NYP bubble? How do you keep yourself sharp? How do you be a consistent learner in life? How do you stay connected to tech and the industry?
Yeah, I walk outside.
So I leave the office.
No, seriously, I attend conferences.
Yeah.
I talk to people who work in different parts of the country, small healthcare organizations, large healthcare organizations, people in adjacent industries, to find out what their concern is. And what I find is that there are a lot of commonalities, but there are different approaches. And with that helps me to not just stay within a particular space, but to open my mind to think about things differently and how I can collaborate with folks better.
Always have a learning mindset.
Yeah.
And let's go to an old favorite podcast questions just for shits and giggles here. What is the best piece of advice that you received that you take action on daily at work?
It's something that I saw in a fortune cookie a number of years ago, which was,
help, I'm trapped in the fortune cookie chocolate. There's my dad joke for the day. I'm done. I'm out.
The early bird catches the worm, but the second mouth gets the cheese.
We're going to leave everyone to ponder that. David, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. Where could folks find you? Where could they connect? Where could they learn more?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always posting something there.
Or just hanging outside NYP's office.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.